37,000 feet over the Indian Ocean, a massive commercial airliner was cruising in perfect silence. Then, without a single warning light or alarm, the computer decided the plane had to go down. It didn't just glitch. It mathematically concluded that diving into the ocean was the only way to save everyone on board. Suddenly, the autopilot violently snapped the nose down. Inside the cabin, passengers were instantly thrown into the ceiling. In the cockpit, the veteran pilots desperately grabbed the metal yokes, pulling back with all of their physical strength to stop the plunge. The aircraft refused to listen. By the time they wrestled it back, the damage was already done. When investigators finally pulled the black box, they expected to find a shattered mechanical part. But the machine wasn't broken. It was operating exactly as it was programmed to. This is the terrifying reality of Qantas Flight 72. To understand how a multi-million-dollar machine could suddenly turn against its own passengers, you have to accept a dangerous shift in modern engineering. Human beings no longer fly the airplane. They simply make digital requests to a computer network. And that computer has absolute ultimate authority over the metal. But what happens when a digital brain experiences a microscopic hallucination? To keep the aircraft stable, engineers gave the autopilot a set of digital eyes. They installed a system to measure the most important number in the sky, the angle of attack, the exact physical tilt of the nose. Because this number is the difference between flying and crashing, the aircraft relies on 3 independent digital brains, constantly cross-checking each other's math. If one computer glitches, the other 2 are programmed to instantly overrule it. It was supposed to be a mathematically perfect shield against failure. Instead, it became a critical blind spot. Deep inside the electronics bay, the primary digital brain suffered a catastrophic confusion. It suddenly generated a massive, physically impossible data spike. It told the flight computer that the plane's nose wasn't flying level. It claimed the nose was pitched up at a terrifying 50 degrees. The flight computer received this rogue data and panicked. Its core programming dictated that a stall is an immediate catastrophic emergency. Operating with absolute authority, the code bypassed the human pilots and initiated a violent anti-stall protocol. The computer believed it was saving the plane. In reality, it was forcing a perfectly healthy aircraft into an uncontrolled high-speed dive toward the ocean. The pilots were trapped in a horrifying physical paradox. Through the windshield, they could see the ocean rushing up at them. Their bodies told them they were plunging. But when they pulled back to level out, the fly-by-wire system actively fought them. The machine trusted its corrupted digital data over the desperate physical strength of the 2 human beings in the seats. The pilots were locked out of their own aircraft. Inside the cockpit, absolute chaos erupted. Because the computer was processing fragmented data, it began triggering contradictory alarms. First, the computerized voice screamed, "Stall," telling the pilots they were flying too slow. 2 seconds later, the overspeed clacker began deafeningly blaring, telling them they were flying too fast. The screens were lying to them in 2 opposite directions at the exact same time. The pilots had to make a choice that goes against all modern training. Ignore the multi-million-dollar digital dashboards, look out the physical window, and violently force the computer to shut down. By the time they wrestled the plane back to a level altitude, the cabin was a disaster zone. When the aircraft made an emergency landing, investigators swarmed the plane. They expected to find a broken wire or a shattered sensor. But when they pulled the black boxes, they found something so simple, it's terrifying. The physical sensors were fine. The backup computers were fine. But investigators discovered a microscopic digital collision. The computer processes thousands of variables per second. altitude and angle of attack are processed on the same digital highway, just milliseconds apart. For one microscopic fraction of a second, the computer took the data reading for the plane's altitude, 37,000, and accidentally pasted it into the data slot for the angle of attack. The computer suddenly thought the nose was pitched up at 37,000 degrees, an impossible number. The redundancy software was designed to filter out broken sensors, not mathematical hallucinations. The algorithm looked at the impossible data, and instead of rejecting it, the code accepted it as a perfectly formatted, urgent truth. How did perfectly functional software paste the wrong data into the wrong slot? It wasn't a hacker. It wasn't a bug. It was a single event upset. Investigators concluded the aircraft was struck by a high-energy cosmic ray. This invisible, subatomic particle from deep space passed right through the metal hull and struck a single, microscopic transistor inside the computer's memory. That physical impact flipped a single binary 0 into a 1. That single flipped bit mathematically scrambled the data, causing the altitude to be read as the pitch. When the report was published, the aerospace community went into shock. They had spent billions of dollars building planes that could fly themselves and prevent human error. But Flight 72 proved that true perfection is physically impossible. You can shield a computer from hackers, but you cannot protect a digital brain from a random particle fired from the other side of the galaxy that decides to strike a single microchip at the exact wrong microsecond. The ultimate digital system was compromised by the universe itself. We are building fully autonomous airliners, self-driving trucks, and AI surgical robots. We are constantly removing the physical human override switch, trusting that the code will protect us. But Flight 72 is the ultimate warning. Code does not exist in a vacuum. It relies on fragile, microscopic hardware that is vulnerable to the invisible physics of the world around it. The next time you are sitting on an automated vehicle and the screen tells you everything is flawless, remember the single event upset. We have given the machines absolute authority over our lives, and it only takes a single flipped bit for the machine to decide. It's time to dive.